to be respected and enforced. The asylum and immigration systems are important, but for too long, those rules just simply haven't been properly enforced. That's why we're boosting both returns and enforcement. 19,000 people who don't have any right to be in the UK returned since the general election, and also a big increase in the illegal work.
Starmer's battle, strategy or surrender? Before we dive into what might be the most pivotal moment in Labour's government thus far, if you appreciate sharp, unflinching analysis of British politics, do hit that subscribe button. We don't do spin here at UK Connors, just the unvarnished truth about Westminster's power plays. Now, let's talk about Yvette Cooper for a moment. The Home Secretary sits at the cabinet table watching all of this unfold, presumably with that characteristic steely demeanour she's perfected over decades in politics. She knows what's coming. They all do. But knowing and being prepared are two entirely different things, aren't they? Sir Keir Starmer stood on that conference stage in Liverpool and delivered something rather unexpected. Passion. Actual, genuine passion. Not the carefully calibrated, focus group variety we've grown accustomed to from him, but something that resembled authentic conviction. He took aim at Nigel Farage with both barrels, declaring he'd fight reform with every breath in his body. Stirring stuff. The Labour faithful lapped it up like it was a last pint before closing time. Even Farage and his merry band of disruptors seemed rattled, which in Westminster terms counts as a victory of sorts. Then there was the Andy Burnham circus. The mayor of Manchester arrived in Liverpool with all the subtlety of a brass band at a funeral, dropping hints about leadership challenges and party unrest. By the time he left, he'd comprehensively blown himself up, as one cabinet member rather deliciously put it. Silly Andy indeed. He ended up endorsing Starmer anyway, tail firmly between legs. But here's the thing. And this is where it gets interesting. Burnham's bruising doesn't mean he was wrong about the diagnosis. He merely proved himself an inadequate surgeon. Because outside that conference bubble, beyond the security cordons and the tribal loyalty, reality looks rather different, doesn't it? Opinions polling tells a story that would make any number 10 strategist reach for something stronger than tea. Voters who thought Labour had a good conference were outnumbered 2-1 by those who reckoned it was a disaster. 2-1. Let that sink in. Starmer's personal ratings have plummeted to depth that would make even the most optimistic spin doctor weep. And here's the real kicker. Nigel Farage, a man who's never won a Westminster seat, now leads Starmer preferred Prime Minister by 31 points to 26. Though admittedly, a third of voters would rather have neither, which is perhaps the most damning verdict of all. The deputy leadership race between Bridget Phillipson and Lucy Powell should be riveting drama, except it's more like watching paint dry in slightly different shades of beige. Both women from the north of England. Both Labour lifers since their 20s, both are essentially offering similar visions wrapped in marginally different packaging. This isn't Dennis Healey versus Tony Benn, that legendary knife-edge battle that defined an era. This is something far less epic but potentially more revealing. Phillipson positions herself as a unity candidate, warning against a division that delights the right-wing press. Powell, rather more daringly, positions herself as the antidote to groupthink, the shop steward who'll speak truth to power. The fact that Powell, sacked from cabinet just over a month ago, looks likely to tells you everything you need to know about how party members feel about their leadership. They are not reaching out to pat Starmer on the head. They intend on bloodying his nose. Then we have the budget. Oh, the budget. Rachel Reeves's first attempt taught the government a harsh lesson about targeted tax rises. Attack farmers, and suddenly you've got an extremely vocal, extremely well-organized opposition on your hands. So now the strategists are whispering about broader tax rises, the kind that fall on everyone and therefore, theoretically, provoke less concentrated fury. Some Gordon Brown acolytes are advocating for VAT increases, suggesting governments usually get away with those. Others fancy the switcheroo of cutting national insurance while hiking income tax, which would cleverly extract more from those currently exempt. But here's the elephant in the cabinet room. These options would shatter Labour's signature manifesto pledge on taxes. Remember Nick Clegg and tuition fees? That political suicide that the Liberal Democrats are still paying for? This could be that on steroids. Electoral annihilation wrapped in a budget statement. May's elections loom on the horizon like storm clouds gathering over the Clyde and the Severn. Scotland and Wales, traditional Labour strongholds, are looking decidedly shaky. Polling suggests Labour trailing in third in both nations, behind Reform on the right and the Nationalists on the left. Losing Scotland, where the SNP has governed for nearly 2 decades, would sting. But losing Wales? Wales, where Labour has held power since the scene's creation. That would be catastrophic. That's a kind of defeat that triggers panic, recriminations, and whispered conversations in parliamentary corridors about whether the captain should go down with the ship or whether perhaps a new captain might be needed. One cabinet minister, speaking with refreshing candor, admitted to a brutal truth. Voters aren't listening right now. They are too disillusioned, too distrustful, too exhausted by political promises that evaporate like morning mist. When your own cabinet members are essentially admitting you've lost the room, you know you're in trouble. Burnham had an awful week, but has put something dangerous into play, the idea that Labour might need to change leaders. It's out there now, floating around Westminster like a ghost at the feast. Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary and one of the sharper knives in the drawer, admitted what everyone knows but few say aloud. Anyone in politics who claims they are not ambitious about the top job is lying. She and Wes Streeting, Labour's most articulate communicator, keep cropping up in conversations when MPs mentally audition alternatives to Starmer. Not actively plotting, necessarily, but the names are being mentioned. The possibilities are being weighed. Starmer frames the next general election as nothing less than a battle for Britain's soul. Grand words, certainly. But here's the uncomfortable question. It's not enough to be up for the fight. You need a strategy to win it. You need to convince your own party that you have a plan, that you know the way forward, that this isn't just stubborn determination masquerading as leadership. Right now, that's the challenge Starmer faces, and it's arguably more formidable than anything the opposition can throw at him. The coming weeks will reveal whether he's got the strategic nous to navigate these treacherous waters, or whether he's simply a man caught in currents he can't control, fighting battles he can't win. We'll be watching, analyzing, and bringing you the unfiltered truth. That's what we do at UK Connors. Don't miss the next installment. Subscribe now, because Westminster waits for no